A colony was lost, then 700,000 human warships arrived. Part 1. The Silence of Haven Admiral. Kane stood in the communication center of the Terran Defense Station, staring at the blank screen that should have been showing Haven Colony's daily report. The silence stretched on for 3 hours now, and everyone in the room knew something was very wrong. "Sir, we've tried all frequencies," reported Lieutenant Davis, his voice tight with worry. "Haven Colony is not responding to any of our calls." Kane rubbed his tired eyes. Haven Colony was the pride of human expansion, a beautiful world on the outer edge of known space. 12 million people called it home. They grew food that fed dozens of other colonies and had built cities that sparkled like jewels from orbit. The colony never missed a daily check-in. Never. "What was their last transmission?" Kane asked. Davis pulled up the recording. The voice of Colony Director Martin came through the speakers, but it was broken and filled with static. "This is Haven. Colony, ... under attack, ... ships in orbit. They're not responding to our ... Oh God, they're firing on the cities. ... Send help. Please send." Then nothing but empty space noise. Kane felt his stomach drop. In 30 years of military service, he had heard that kind of fear in a person's voice only a few times. It was the sound of someone watching their world die. "Get me a full scan of the Haven system," Kane ordered. "I want every sensor we have pointed that way." The technicians worked quickly. Kane watched the data come in, hoping to see some sign that Haven was still there, still alive. But the readings told a different story. The orbital stations that should have been broadcasting signals were gone. Communication satellites were silent. Even the automated weather stations on the planet's surface had stopped working. "Sir," called out Sergeant Mills from the scanning station. "I'm picking up debris fields in Haven's orbit. Large ones." Kane walked over to look at the data. Himself. The debris patterns were wrong. They were too big to spread out. This wasn't the result of an accident or natural disaster. Someone had destroyed Haven's orbital infrastructure deliberately. "Launch a reconnaissance drone," Kane said quietly. "I want to know what happened there." The drone would take 6 hours to reach Haven and send back real images. Kane spent those hours walking the corridors of the station, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. Haven was far from any conflict zone. They had no enemies, no resources worth fighting over except food and farmland. Who would attack a peaceful farming colony? When the drone's data started coming in, Kane wished he had never asked that question. The first images showed Haven's 3 major cities, or what was left of them. Where millions of people had lived and worked just days ago, there were now only glass craters and twisted metal. The farm fields that had fed the sector were burned black. The rivers ran thick with ash. "My God," whispered Davis, looking over Kane's shoulder at the images. "They're all gone." Kane said nothing. Couldn't speak. The images kept coming, each one worse than the last. The orbital shipyards where Haven built their cargo vessels were nothing but debris. The space elevators that connected the planet to its orbital stations had been cut down like trees. Even the small mining stations on Haven's moons had been destroyed. 12 million people gone. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures," reported Mills. "The weapon patterns don't match any human technology." Kane looked at the energy readings. The weapons that had done this were powerful and precise. It had targeted every major population center, every piece of infrastructure, every sign of human civilization. This wasn't a random attack or a battle. Gone wrong? This was planned extermination. "Can you identify the weapon signatures?" Kane asked. Mills worked at his console for several minutes before answering. "They match some of the data we have on Vorthan Empire weapons, sir. But the power levels are much higher than anything we've seen before." The Vorthan Empire. Kane knew about them from intelligence reports. They were a militaristic species that had been expanding their territory for the past 50 years. Had taken over several star systems, always claiming they needed the resources for their growing population. But they had never attacked human colonies before. There had been no warning, no demands, no communication at all. Kane looked at the images from Haven one more time. Somewhere in those glass craters were the bodies of 12 million humans. farmers and teachers and children and old people who had never hurt anyone. They had just wanted to live their lives in peace on a distant world. "Get me a secure line to Earth Command," Kane said. The call took 20 minutes to connect due to the distance. When Fleet Admiral Roberts appeared on the screen, Kane could see the worry in his old friend's eyes. "Kane, please tell me you have." "Good news about Haven," Roberts said. "They're all dead, sir. Every single person on Haven Colony has been killed. The Vorthan Empire used orbital bombardment to destroy every city, every farm, every sign of human life." Roberts was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "Are you certain it was the Vorthans?" "Weapon signatures match their technology. And sir, this wasn't a military action. This was genocide. They killed 12 million civilians." Kane watched Roberts process this information. He could see the anger building in the older man's face, but also the caution that came with high command. "Kane, I need you to maintain your position and wait for orders. Do not take any action against the Vorthon Empire until we can assess the situation properly." "Sir, with respect, what is there to assess? They murdered an entire colony. I understand your anger, Admiral, but we need to be smart about this. The Vorthan Empire has a large military. If we respond with force, it could mean war across multiple star systems. Billions of lives could be at risk." Kane felt something cold settle in his chest. "So we do nothing. We let them get away with murdering 12 million humans? We will pursue diplomatic solutions first." Perhaps this was a rogue action by a Vorthon commander. Perhaps they thought Haven was a military target. We need to give them a chance to explain. Kane stared at the images from Haven on his secondary screen. Children's playgrounds turned to glass, hospitals reduced to rubble, schools where human children had learned to read and write, now nothing but ash and radiation. "I understand your orders, sir," Kane said quietly. But as he ended the call, Kane knew that he would not be following those orders. 12 million humans had died screaming in terror as alien weapons burned their world. Their families across human space would want answers. They would want justice. And if Earth Command wouldn't give it to them, Kane would find another way. He began making calls to old friends in the fleet. It was time to see how many other humans believed that genocide deserved more than diplomatic protests. A colony was lost then. 700,000 human warships arrived. Part 2. The Admiral's Gambit Admiral. Kane sat in his private office 3 days after the call with Earth Command. The official response from the Colonial Senate had arrived that morning, and it made his blood boil. They wanted to send a diplomatic team to negotiate with the Vorthan Empire. They wanted to ask politely why the aliens had murdered 12 million humans. Kane crumpled the message and threw it in the trash.
Diplomacy would not bring back the dead children of Haven Colony.
Diplomacy would not make the Vorthons pay for what they had done. But Kane had spent those 3 days making other calls. Calls to old friends who commanded fleets in distant star systems. Calls to admirals who had fought beside him in the border wars. Calls to captains who understood that some crimes could not be forgiven. The first to respond was Admiral Torres from the Centauri Defense Fleet. Her message was short and clear. "Kane, I saw the images from Haven. My ships are ready when you give the word." Then came Admiral Park from the Outer Rim Patrol. "Count me in, old friend. Those monsters need to pay." One by one, responses came in from across human space. Fleet commanders who were tired of waiting for politicians to grow backbones. Leaders who remembered what it meant to protect human lives. Within 72 hours, Kane had private commitments from 47 admirals commanding over 300,000 warships, but it wasn't enough. The Vorthan Empire was huge, with military forces spread across dozens of star systems. If humans were going to make them pay for Haven, they needed more than 300,000 ships. They needed everything. Kane opened a secure channel to Commander Blake, his most trusted aide. "Blake, I need you to contact every shipyard in human space. Tell them we're placing emergency orders for all available vessels." "Sir, Earth Command will never approve those orders." "Earth's Command doesn't need to know about them yet. I'll use the emergency military authority codes. Tell the shipyards this is a matter of colonial defense." Blake hesitated. "Sir, that's technically against regulations." Kane looked at his aide with cold eyes. Blake, do you know what's against regulations? Letting aliens murder 12 million humans without consequences? Send those orders. While Blake worked on acquiring ships, Kane began his most dangerous task. He started recruiting crews from across the military. He sent coded messages to officers he trusted, asking them to volunteer for a special mission. He didn't tell them what the mission was, but word spread quickly through the fleet networks. The response was overwhelming. Within a week, Kane had more volunteers than he could use. Pilots wanted revenge for Haven. Marines wanted to make the Vorthons pay. Even civilian contractors offered their services for free, but Kane's activities couldn't stay secret forever. On the 10th day after Haven's destruction, he received an angry call from Fleet Admiral Roberts. "Kane, what the hell do you think you're doing?" Roberts demanded. "I'm getting reports that you're mobilizing unauthorized fleets across 12 star systems. I'm preparing to give Haven Colony the justice they deserve, sir." "Justice? This isn't justice, Kane. This is you going rogue and potentially starting a war that could destroy human civilization." Kane stood up behind his desk. "Human civilization is already under attack, sir. The Vorthons proved that when they murdered 12 million of our people. The only question now is whether we're going to defend ourselves or let them think humans are easy targets. Kane, I'm ordering you to stand down immediately. Recall all ships and report to Earth for disciplinary action." "I'm sorry, sir, but I can't do that." Robert's face turned red with anger. "Admiral Kane, you are hereby relieved of command and ordered to surrender yourself for court-martial." "Understood, sir? But I won't be doing that either." Kane ended the call and turned to Blake.
"How many
ships do we have now?" 530,000, sir. "And more are joining every hour." Kane nodded. "Gosh." It was time to disappear before Earth Command sent ships to arrest him. "Send the signal to all fleet commanders. Tell them to jump to the rally point. We're going dark. Across human space. Massive." Fleets began moving toward empty space coordinates that Kane had chosen months earlier during a routine patrol. The location was far from any inhabited system, hidden in the shadow of a dead star where sensors couldn't easily track them. Kane's own command ship was one of the last to leave. As they prepared for the jump to hyperspace, Kane sent one final message to Earth Command. To Fleet Admiral Roberts in the Colonial Senate, Haven Colony contained 12 million human souls. They were farmers, teachers, children, and grandparents. They hurt no one and threatened no one. The Vorthon Empire murdered them all in cold blood, and our government's response is to send diplomats to ask why. I cannot accept this. I will not accept this. Haven's children deserve better than empty words and political speeches. They deserve justice, and if the government won't provide it, then the military will. I am taking command of all loyal human forces to ensure that the Vorthons pay for their crimes. This is not rebellion against humanity. This is humanity defending itself against monsters who think we are weak. When this is over, I will face whatever consequences you decide. But first, the Vorthons will learn what happens when you attack human families." Kane's ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth Command with no way to track him. At the rally point, Kane watched as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. Massive dreadnoughts designed for planetary assault. Fast attack cruisers built for fleet combat. Carrier groups with thousands of fighter craft. Supply ships loaded with ammunition and fuel. Even corporate security vessels had joined the growing armada. Admiral Torres was the first to board Kane's flagship for the command meeting. "Kane, this is incredible. I've never seen so many human ships in one place." "How many do we have now?" Kane asked. Blake checked his latest count. "There's 680,000 warships, sir. We're still getting new arrivals." Kane looked out at the massive fleet surrounding his ship. Each vessel represented dozens or hundreds of crew members who had chosen revenge over safety. They had abandoned their normal duties, ignored orders from their superiors, and risked their careers to join his cause. "Sir," reported the communications. "Officer, we're receiving a transmission from the last group of ships jumping in. Put it through." The voice of Admiral Chen from the Frontier Guard came over the speakers. "Kane, my entire fleet is here. Every ship, every crew member, are ready to make the Vorthons pay for what they did to Haven." Kane smiled grimly. the last pieces were falling into place. Soon, the Vorthan Empire would learn that humanity was not as helpless as they thought. A colony was lost, then 700,000 human warships arrived. Part 3. The gathering Storm Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the largest human armada ever assembled. The fleet stretched as far as his eyes could. See ship after ship floating in perfect formation around the dead star. 700,000 warships, each one carrying crew members who had abandoned everything to join his cause. "Sir, the final count is complete," reported Commander Blake. 700,043 vessels. Every class of ship in the human military is represented. Kane nodded slowly. The numbers were almost impossible to believe. The massive dreadnoughts at the center of the formation were each the size of small cities, carrying enough firepower to level continents. Around them moved the heavy cruisers, their hulls bristling with weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. Beyond those were the destroyers, fast and deadly, built to hunt down fleeing enemies. The carrier groups were perhaps the most impressive sight. Each carrier held thousands of fighter craft, and there were over 3,000 carriers in the fleet. That meant millions of small, agile ships that could swarm enemy vessels like angry insects. Kane had seen fighter swarms in action before, and they were terrifying to face. "What about supplies?" Kane asked. "We have enough ammunition and fuel for extended combat operations, sir. Supply ships are loaded with everything we need." Some of the corporate vessels even brought extra food and medical supplies. Kane was amazed by the support they had received. When word spread through human space about his mission, people had volunteered for more than just military service. Civilian engineers had joined to help maintain the ships. Doctors had come to treat wounded crew members. Even families had sent care packages for the soldiers. But the most surprising volunteers were the veterans. Men and women who had retired from military service years ago had come out of retirement to join Kane's fleet. Some were so old they could barely walk, but they wanted to be part of the mission that would make the Vorthans pay for Haven Colony. "Admiral Torres is requesting permission to come aboard," announced the communications officer. "Send her over." Torres arrived with the other senior commanders for their daily strategy meeting. They gathered around the holographic display table in Kane's command center, looking at detailed maps of Vorthan space. "The intelligence reports are coming in," Torres said. "Our scout ships have been observing Vorthon military installations. For the past week, the hologram showed the layout of the Vorthan Empire. Their territory covered 15 star systems, with their homeworld at the center. Military bases were scattered throughout their space, but most of their fleet was concentrated around their capital system." "How many ships do they have total?" asked Admiral Park. "Our best estimate is 50,000 warships," replied Torres. "Most of them are older designs, but they do have some new heavy vessels that we haven't seen before." Kane studied the display. 50,000 ships against 700,000. The numbers were so one-sided that it almost seemed unfair. But Kane remembered the images from Haven Colony, the glass craters where cities used to be, and he felt no sympathy for the aliens who had done that. "What about their planetary defenses?" Kane asked. "Each major world has orbital defense platforms and ground-based weapons. But, sir, our firepower advantage is so overwhelming that their defenses won't matter much." Admiral Chen leaned forward. "Kane, are you sure we want to do this? Once we attack, there's no going back. Earth Command will consider us traitors." Kane looked around the table at his fellow commanders. These were good people who had risked everything to join his cause. They deserved an honest answer. "Chen, 12 million humans are dead because the Vorthons thought we were too weak to fight back. If we don't make them pay for that, every other alien species in the galaxy will think humans are easy targets. Our colonies, our families, our entire civilization will be at risk. But what about the consequences?" Chen pressed. "Earth's command has probably declared us outlaws by now. We'll never be able to go home." Kane was quiet for a moment. He had thought about this every day since leaving human space. By defying orders and taking the fleet, he had committed the greatest act of military rebellion in human history. When this was over, he would probably spend the rest of his life in prison. His fellow commanders would face the same fate. "Chen, I've been a soldier for 30 years. I've followed orders, served my government, and tried to protect human lives. But sometimes, doing the right thing means breaking the rules. Haven Colony deserves justice, and I'm willing to pay any price to give it to them." The other commanders nodded in agreement. It all made the same choice, knowing what it would cost them. Meanwhile, in Vorthan space, our intelligence services were frantically trying to understand what the humans were doing. Scout ships had reported the massive fleet buildup, but the numbers seemed impossible. General Cray, the Vorthan military commander, read the reports with growing disbelief. 700,000 ships? That's impossible? No species commits that many resources to a single military operation? His aide, Colonel Vex, shifted nervously. "Sir, our scouts have confirmed the numbers multiple times. Human fleet is real, and it's enormous." "But why?" Cray demanded. "We destroyed one small farming colony. It wasn't even a military target. Why would they respond with such massive force?" Vex had studied human behavior for years, but he couldn't answer that question. In Vorthon culture, losing a single colony would be unfortunate, but not worth risking an entire civilization. The response should be proportional. Maybe a small military strike or economic sanctions. But humans, it seemed, thought differently, sir. "What are your orders?" Vex asked. Cray looked at the tactical displays showing human ship positions. Even if the numbers were exaggerated, even if the humans only had half as many ships as reported, the Vorthan military would still be outnumbered. By more than 10 to 1, begin evacuating non-essential personnel from our border systems. If the humans are really planning an attack, we need to minimize casualties. But even as he gave the orders, Cray couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important about human nature. No rational species would risk everything for revenge over a single lost colony. What he didn't understand was that humans weren't being rational. They were being human. Sometimes that was far more dangerous than any logical. Military strategy. A colony was lost, then 700,000 human warships arrived. Part 4, The Wrath of Teretha Vorthon. Homeworld of Korath had never seen so many ships appear at once. One moment, the system's outer edge was empty space. The next moment, 700,000 human warships dropped out of hyperspace like a gathering storm front. Admiral Mulcaine stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display as his massive fleet took position. The Vorthon home system lay before them, with 6 inhabited planets and their capital world at the center. Orbital stations and defense platforms surrounded each world, but they looked tiny compared to the human armada. "Sir, Vorthan Defense Forces are scrambling to intercept," reported Commander Blake. "They're launching everything they have." Kane watched as red dots appeared on the display, representing enemy ships. The Vorthan military was responding quickly. He had to give them credit for that. But their entire home defense fleet numbered only 48,000 vessels, less than 1/10 the size of Kane's armada. "Admiral Torres, take your battle group and secure the outer system," Kane ordered. "Admiral Park, position your ships to cut off any escape routes. Admiral Chen, prepare your carriers for fighter deployment." The human fleet moved with practiced precision. This wasn't Kane's first major battle, and his commanders were experienced military leaders. They had spent the journey to Vorthon space. Planning every detail of the attack, General Cray aboard the Vorthon command ship watched the human deployment with growing horror. The enemy fleet was so large it took up most of his tactical display. His own ships looked like small insects facing a hurricane. "Sir, should we attempt to negotiate?" asked Colonel Vex, his voice shaking. Cray considered the option. Perhaps the humans could be reasoned with. Perhaps they would accept some form of compensation for the colony they had lost. "Open a channel to the human flagship," Cray ordered. On Kane's bridge, the communication officer reported the incoming transmission. "Sir, the Vorthan commander wants to talk. Put him through." General Cray's reptilian face appeared on the main screen. His species had evolved from desert predators, scaled skin and sharp teeth, but now he looked more afraid than threatening. "Human. Commander. I am General Cray of the Vorthan Defense Force. Your fleet has entered our sovereign territory without permission. State your intentions." Kane stepped forward, his face cold as space itself. "My intentions are simple, General. You murdered 12 million humans on Haven Colony. Now you pay the price." Haven Colony was a military necessity, Cray said, struggling to find the right words. They were expanding into territory we needed for our growing population.
Oh, they were farmers.
General. Farmers with families and children. They grew food and built schools and never hurt anyone. Cray's alien features showed confusion. But they were taking resources that belonged to us. In war, such actions are necessary. Kane felt his anger building. The alien truly didn't understand what he had done wrong. To the Vorthans, genocide was just another military tactic. "General Cray, 12 million innocent people are dead because of your military necessity. Now you're going to learn what human military necessity looks like." Kane ended the transmission and turned to his weapons officer. "All ships prepare for combat. Target their military vessels first. Show them no mercy." The human fleet opened fire simultaneously. 700,000 warships unleashed their weapons in a coordinated barrage that lit up the void like a new star. Plasma cannons, antimatter torpedoes, rail guns, and energy beams streaked across space toward the Vorthan Defense Force. The aliens had advanced shields and armor, but nothing could withstand that level of concentrated firepower. Vorthon ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as human weapons tore through their defenses. Within minutes, entire squadrons of alien vessels were reduced to debris and radiation. "Sir, enemy forces are attempting to regroup," reported. The tactical officer, Kane, watched as the surviving Vorthan ships tried to form defensive lines. They were brave, he had to admit. Even facing impossible odds, they continued to fight. But bravery couldn't overcome the sheer scale of human vengeance. The carrier groups launched their fighters. Millions of small human craft swarmed toward the remaining alien ships. Fighters moved like schools of deadly fish, overwhelming Vorthan point defenses through pure numbers. Each enemy vessel found itself surrounded by hundreds of agile attackers, pecking away at shields and armor until the larger ships could deliver killing blows. Admiral Torres led her battle group against the orbital defense platforms around the capital world. The massive structures were heavily armed and protected by thick armor, but the human dreadnoughts were designed for exactly this kind of target. "All batteries concentrate fire on Platform 7, Torres ordered. Her ships focused. Their weapons on a single platform, and the combined firepower was devastating. The alien structure's shields collapsed in seconds, and the platform itself was torn apart by antimatter explosions. One by one, the orbital defenses fell. The Vorthans fought desperately, but they were facing a level of firepower that no single species could match. The humans had brought the combined military might of their entire civilization to this battle. On the surface of Korath, billions of Vorthon civilians watched the battle through their viewing screens. They had been told their military was invincible, that their empire was too strong for any enemy to challenge. Now they watched their fleet being systematically destroyed by an alien force that seemed to have no limits. "Sir, the remaining enemy ships are attempting to flee the system," reported Commander Blake. Kane wasn't surprised. Any rational commander would try to escape when facing such overwhelming odds. But Kane had planned for this possibility. "Admiral Park, deploy your pursuit squadrons. Don't let any of them escape." The fastest human ships, destroyers and light cruisers built for speed, broke formation and chased after the fleeing Vorthons. The alien ships were fast, but the human pursuit vessels were faster. One by one, the escaping ships were caught and destroyed. Within 6 hours of the battle's start, the Vorthan home defense fleet had been completely eliminated. Not a single enemy warship remained operational. The space around Korath was filled with debris fields and the wreckage of what had once been a proud military force. Kane looked at the tactical display. It's now showing only green dots representing human ships. The red enemy markers were gone. "Of them, casualties report," Kane requested. "Minimal, sir. We lost fewer than 200 ships, mostly to suicide attacks by desperate enemy vessels." Total human casualties are under 5,000. Kane nodded grimly. The price of victory had been light for his forces, but devastating for the enemy. That's what happened when you faced an enemy that had brought 700,000 warships to avenge their dead. Open a channel to all ships, Kane commanded. Patch it through to the surface of Korath as well. I want every Vorthan in the system to hear this. The communication officer worked quickly to establish the connection. Soon, Kane's voice was being broadcast across the entire system. People of the Vorthan Empire, you have just witnessed the destruction of your military forces. In 6 hours, 700,000 human warships have eliminated your entire home defense fleet. This is what happens when you murder human families. A colony was lost, then 700,000 human warships arrived. Part 5. The price of genocide. Kane's voice echoed across every communication channel in the Vorthan system as 700,000 human warships maintained their positions around the defeated homeworld. You destroyed Haven Colony, Kane continued his broadcast. You murdered 12 million innocent humans who only wanted to farm and build families. They had children who played in parks. They had grandparents who told stories. They had teachers. And doctors and artists? Now they are all dead because you decided they were in your way. On the surface of Korath, billions of Vorthons listened in stunned silence. Their entire military had been destroyed in 6 hours. Their orbital defenses were gone. Space stations were burning wreckage. And the human fleet still floated above them like a dark cloud of vengeance. Now you understand the price of genocide, Kane said. When you kill human families, we will cross any distance and pay any cost to make you pay for it. Admiral Torres approached Kane on the bridge. Sir, what are your orders regarding the planetary bombardment? Kane looked at the tactical display, showing the 6 inhabited worlds of the Vorthan system. Each planet held billions of civilian aliens who had played no direct role in Haven's destruction. But they were part of the empire that had committed genocide against humans. Target all military installations, spaceports, and industrial centers, Kane ordered. I want their capacity for war completely eliminated, but avoid civilian population centers. Sir, that will cripple their entire civilization, warned Commander Blake. Good, Kane replied coldly. Maybe next time they'll think twice before murdering human colonies. The human fleet began systematic orbital bombardment of Vorthan military targets. Massive dreadnoughts fired their main guns at planetary defense installations, turning fortified bunkers into smoking craters. Carrier groups launched fighter strikes against spaceports, destroying every ship capable of leaving the planet. Industrial complexes that manufactured weapons and military equipment were reduced to rubble. The bombardment was precise and methodical. Human targeting systems were advanced enough to hit military targets without causing excessive civilian casualties. But the psychological impact was devastating. The Vorthons watched their military might being systematically erased from existence. General Cray, now a prisoner aboard his damaged command ship, was brought before Kane for interrogation. The reptilian alien looked defeated, his proud military bearing gone. Why? Cray asked. Why bring such massive force against us? Haven was just one colony. Kane studied the alien commander who had ordered the destruction of 12 million human lives. Just one colony? Those 12 million? People were not numbers on a report. They were human beings with names and dreams and families who loved them. But in war, casualties are inevitable, Cray protested. We needed their territory for our expanding population. Then you should have asked to buy it, or negotiated a treaty, or found uninhabited worlds to settle. Instead, you chose murder. Cray looked confused. Negotiate? With a weaker species? That is not how expansion works. Kane realized that the alien truly didn't understand. In Vorthan culture, might made right. They took what they wanted from those too weak to stop them. The concept of peaceful coexistence with other species was foreign to them. General, let me explain something about humans, Kane said. Don't forget when our people are killed. We don't forgive genocide. We will always come for those who hurt our families. As the bombardment continued, other alien species across the galaxy received detailed reports of what was happening. In Vorthen space, the news spread like wildfire through diplomatic channels and intelligence networks. On the Zephyrian homeworld, Chancellor Voss convened an emergency session of their ruling council. The humans have deployed 700,000 warships against a single enemy. 700,000. Our entire military has only 50,000 vessels. But why such massive retaliation? Asked Minister Hale. The Vorthens only destroyed one human colony. That's exactly the point, Voss replied grimly. 2 humans, 1 colony matters enough to risk their entire military. What do you think they would do if someone attacked their homeworld? Similar. Conversations were taking place on dozens of worlds as alien civilizations reassessed their understanding of human nature. Many species had viewed humans as relatively peaceful, focused on trade and exploration rather than conquest. The destruction of the Vorthen military changed that perception forever. Meanwhile, Earth Command finally caught up with Kane's fleet. Fleet Admiral Roberts arrived with 100 ships, intending to arrest the rogue admiral and his followers. But when Roberts saw the scope of what Kane had accomplished, his anger turned to amazement. "Kane, do you realize what you've done?" Roberts asked during their communication. "I've given Haven Colony the justice they deserved, sir." "Ah, you've terrified every alien species in the galaxy? Half the diplomatic channels are requesting meetings to discuss peace treaties. The other half are asking about joining defensive alliances against us." Kane allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Maybe now they'll think twice before attacking human colonies." Roberts was quiet for a long moment. "Kane, I have orders to arrest you and your commanders for treason and unauthorized military action." "I understand, sir. We're ready to face the consequences." "However," Roberts continued, "the Colonial Senate has also instructed me to inform you that public opinion back home is overwhelmingly in your favor. People are calling you the hero of Haven Colony. There are parades in your honor on a dozen worlds." Kane was surprised. He'd expected to be branded a criminal and a traitor. "Sir, what does that mean for my court-martial?" "It means the politicians are scrambling to avoid prosecuting the most popular military commander in human history. It also means they're terrified of what other species might do if they think we've weakened our military by punishing our most effective admiral." On the surface of Koreth, the Vorthen government finally surrendered unconditionally. They agreed to pay massive reparations for Haven Colony, disband most of their military, submit to human oversight of their expansion activities. More importantly, they agreed to broadcast a message to every species in the galaxy, explaining what had happened and why. The message was simple. The Vorthen Empire attacked and destroyed a peaceful human colony, killing 12 million innocent people. In response, humanity sent 700,000 warships to our homeworld and eliminated our entire military in 6 hours. We surrender completely and warn all other species that humans will always avenge their dead. Kane's fleet began the long journey home, their mission complete. The Vorthon Empire was broken, their military destroyed, and their capacity for future aggression eliminated. More importantly, every species in the galaxy now understood a fundamental truth about humanity. When humans said they would protect their own, they meant it. When humans promised consequences for attacking their families, they delivered those consequences with overwhelming force. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their absolute refusal to abandon each other. Haven Colony would never be forgotten. And no alien species would ever again make the mistake of thinking humans were too peaceful to fight back.